Picture the ocean at midnight. The surface lies still beneath a blanket of stars, each pinpoint of light reflected and multiplied across the endless dark water. Beneath that mirror, the world descends layer upon silent layer into depths where sunlight has never reached, where the pressure could crush mountains, where the floor itself is carved by forces older than memory. Somewhere down there, beneath currents that have circled the globe for 10,000 years, lie secrets. Cities, perhaps, temples, roads paved by hands that knew no written history. The ocean keeps them close, guarded by time and salt and the weight of forgetting. For centuries, humanity has gazed out across the blue horizon and wondered, what if something vast was lost? What if an entire civilization advanced, powerful, impossibly ancient slipped beneath the waves before history even began to count its years? The name given to that lost world is Atlantis. But here is the question that haunts the edges of maps and the deep places of the sea. What if Atlantis never truly vanished? What if it still exists, hidden in forms we have not yet recognized, transformed by time into something we mistake for myth or waiting, just beyond the reach of our instruments, patient and silent for the moment when we are ready to see it? The story begins not with answers, but with the hush of deep water, the whisper of empires that rose and fell before the first stone was ever laid in Egypt, the pull of a mystery that has survived every age, every empire, every attempt to dismiss it as fantasy. Atlantis may be gone, or it may simply be sleeping, and the ocean vast, ancient, unreadable holds the truth somewhere in its depths, wrapped in darkness, waiting. The story, as we know it, was born in Athens around 360 BCE. A philosopher named Plato sat in the quiet of his academy and penned two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, that would echo across millennia. Within those texts, he described an island empire of staggering wealth and power, a naval superpower that had dominated the Mediterranean 9,000 years before his own time. The empire was called Atlantis, and according to Plato, it had been swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of catastrophic destruction. The description was vivid: concentric rings of water and land, canals wide enough for fleets, walls plated with precious metals. At its heart stood a temple to Poseidon, gleaming with gold and ivory. The people of Atlantis were said to be descended from the god himself, blessed with abundance, skill, and ambition. But over time, their divine nature faded. They grew corrupt, greedy, drunk on conquest. And so the gods, angered by their hubris, drowned him. Was this history? Or was it allegory? Plato's own contemporaries couldn't agree. Some believed he was recounting a genuine story passed down through Egyptian priests to the Athenian statesman Solon. Others saw it as a moral parable, a cautionary tale about the dangers of empire and the inevitable fall of those who grow too proud. The line between memory and metaphor blurred, and in that ambiguity, a legend was born. For over 2,000 years, scholars, mystics, adventurers, and charlatans have debated the truth of Atlantis. Philosophers dissected Plato's words. Renaissance thinkers searched for its location on incomplete maps. Victorian occultists claimed psychic visions of its towers. Modern scientists dismissed it as fiction, a literary device with no basis in geological reality. But the story refused to die, because embedded within it was something more than fantasy, a deep, unsettling resonance. A sense that somewhere, beneath the surface of recorded history, humanity had forgotten something important. That once, before the first temples rose in Sumer, before the pyramids claimed the desert, there had been another world, and it had drowned. Plato gave that world a name, and in doing so, he ensured that it would never be forgotten. If Atlantis existed, where was it? The question became an obsession. Ancient geographers placed it beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, somewhere in the vast, uncharted Atlantic. Medieval cartographers, working from fragments of Roman maps and travelers' tales, sketched phantom islands in the Western Ocean, each one a candidate for the lost realm. The Atlantic itself became a graveyard of theories. By the Renaissance, the search intensified. Explorers setting sail for the New World half expected to find Atlantis rising from the waves. When they found the Americas instead, some suggested those continents were Atlantis, the land not lost, but merely misplaced in the archives of memory. The Aztecs, the Maya, the mound builders of North America, could they be descendants of Plato's drowned empire? The theories multiplied. Atlantis was in the Mediterranean. It was Antarctica. It was Ireland. It was Crete before the Minoans fell. It was the Azores, peaks of a submerged continent. It was Santorini, destroyed by a volcanic cataclysm that inspired the myth. Every sunken ruin, every curious formation, every geological anomaly became evidence in the endless trial of Atlantis versus reality. And then came technology, sonar, satellite imaging, deep-sea submersibles capable of scanning the ocean floor with unprecedented precision. If a massive island civilization had existed and sunk, surely modern instruments would detect its walls, foundations, the geometric signatures of human construction beneath the sediment. Yet the ocean kept its secrets. Surveys revealed undersea mountains, yes, seamounts and ridges and volcanic plateaus, but nothing definitive. Nothing that could not be explained by plate tectonics and erosion, and the slow, patient work of geology. The maps grew more detailed, but Atlantis remained just beyond the edge of certainty. Still, humanity kept searching, because to abandon the search would be to accept that some mysteries have no answers. And that, perhaps, is a truth harder to bear than any drowned city. Step back from Atlantis for a moment. Look instead at the stories. Across the world, separated by oceans and millennia, cultures tell the same tale. Once, the waters rose. The sea came for the land, relentless and unstoppable, and whole civilizations were erased. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh describes a deluge sent by the gods, survived only by Utnapishtim in his ark. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah rides out the flood while the world drowns. Hindu texts speak of Manu, warned by a fish god to build a boat before the waters consume everything. The pattern repeats. The Greeks remembered Deucalion's flood. The Chinese spoke of Gun Yu taming the great floods. Indigenous Australian cultures preserve oral traditions of coastlines submerged 7,000 years ago, traditions that align, astonishingly, with modern sea level data. A Maya told of worlds destroyed by water. The Inca, too, remembered a time when the ocean swallowed the earth. Why? For a long time, scholars dismissed these as myth-universal archetypes, psychological projections, metaphors for chaos and renewal. But then geology caught up with storytelling, and the stories began to look less like fantasy and more like memory. Between roughly 15,000 and 7,000 years ago, the planet underwent a transformation so dramatic it is difficult to comprehend. The last ice age ended. Glaciers that had stood miles thick across Europe, Asia, and North America began to melt. And all that water, trillions upon trillions of gallons, flowed into the sea. Sea levels rose not gradually, but in pulses. Surges of meltwater that could raise the ocean by meters in a matter of years. Coastlines that had been home to human communities for generations vanished overnight. River valleys became bays. Plains became continental shelves. Entire landscapes drowned, taking with them the people who lived there, the structures they built, the knowledge they carried. Was Atlantis simply one name for that universal catastrophe? One culture's memory of the day the sea rose and refused to recede? Perhaps Plato's island was never a specific place, but a symbol, a collective scar left on the human psyche by the greatest environmental disaster our species had ever witnessed. The flood, it seems, was real, and humanity never forgot. Imagine the world 12,000 years ago. The ice still grips the northern continents. vast sheets grinding slowly south, carving valleys and scraping bedrock clean. But the climate is shifting. Warming, the glaciers have begun their long retreat, and with every century, they release more water into the sea. The ocean lies 120 meters lower than it does today. The coastlines look nothing like the maps we know. Britain is connected to Europe by a land bridge called Doggerland, a vast plain teeming with game. The Persian Gulf is dry, a fertile river valley where communities thrive. Indonesia is not an archipelago, but a continuous landmass called Sundaland, stretching toward the Asian mainland. The Bering Strait is solid ground, a highway between continents. People live on these drowned lands. They hunt, fish, build settlements, pass down knowledge through generations. They do not know they are living on borrowed time. Then comes the melt. It happens in stages. The first pulse geologists call it meltwater pulse when a strikes around 14,600 years ago. Sea levels jump nearly 20 meters in less than 500 years. Entire regions flood. Communities scatter. The survivors retreat inland, carrying stories of the deluge. But the ocean is not finished. Over the next 7 millennia, it continues to rise. Slower now, but relentless. Islands vanish. Coastlines recede. Harbors drown. The people adapt, migrate, rebuild, but the memory of loss lingers. They tell their children, once we lived where the fish swim now. Once the world was larger. By 6,000 years ago, the sea stabilizes near its modern level. The flooding stops. But the damage is done. Thousands of years of human history, settlements, trade routes, cultural centers lie beneath the waves, buried under silt and sand and the weight of forgetting. If Atlantis was real, this was its moment. Not a divine punishment, but a planetary shift. The same catastrophe that drowned Doggerland, flooded the Black Sea, and submerged the Persian Gulf could easily have swallowed an island civilization in the Atlantic. Plato's timeline 9,000 years before his own era places Atlantis squarely within this window of climatic upheaval. The ice melted, the oceans rose, and the world that existed before became a memory half drowned in myth. But here is where the story shifts from theory to evidence. Because beneath the oceans, archaeologists have found them. Cities. Real, tangible, drowned. Off the coast of Gujarat, India, divers discovered the ruins of Dwarka, a port city submerged around 9,500 years ago. The structure's walls, platforms, anchors carved from stone suggest a sophisticated maritime culture, lost when the sea claimed the land. In Japan, near the island of Yanaguni, underwater formations rise from the seabed in terraces and right angles so precise that some researchers believe they are artificial, an ancient monument or temple carved before the ocean covered it. In the Mediterranean, the city of Pavlopetri lies off the coast of Greece, its streets and buildings preserved in shallow water. In Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, the ruins of Heracleion and Canopus were rediscovered after more than 1,000 years underwater, their temples and statues still intact, waiting in the silt. And then there are the anomalies. In 2001, sonar surveys off the coast of Cuba detected geometric formations at a depth of 700 meters far deeper than any known ancient city, deep enough to suggest that if they are structures, they are impossibly old. The images show symmetrical patterns, straight lines, possible plazas. Geologists remain skeptical, attributing the shapes to natural geology. But the question lingers, what if they're not? The ocean, it turns out, is littered with ruins. Some are well documented, their histories known. Others are mysteries, half glimpsed by sonar and ROVs, their origins debated. Each discovery chips away at the assumption that ancient humans never built near the coasts, never ventured far from river valleys, never developed maritime civilizations capable of grandeur. Atlantis may be a name without a location. But the principle that advanced cultures rose and fell along coastlines now submerged is no longer fantasy. It is archaeology. The cities are down there. The question is, how many more are waiting to be found? Now, turn toward the Atlantic itself. The ocean floor here is not flat. It is a landscape, ridges and valleys, mountains and plains, shaped by forces that tear the planet's crust apart. At the heart of it runs the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a volcanic scene where tectonic plates diverge, magma wells up, and new seafloor is born. It is one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Rising from that ridge are the Azores' 9 volcanic islands breaking the surface, the peaks of underwater mountains. To some, they are merely islands. To others, they are the last visible remnants of a drowned continent. The mountaintops of Atlantis itself, the only parts that remain above the waves. The hypothesis is tantalizing. Plato described Atlantis as lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic. The Azores fit that description. Their position on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge suggests they were once part of a larger landmass, though geologists argue that any such landmass would have submerged millions of years ago, long before humans existed. Yet anomalies persist. Sonar has detected seamount submerged peaks scattered across the Atlantic, some flat-topped as if they were once islands eroded by waves. Beach sand has been dredged from depths where it should not exist, suggesting land that was once at sea level. Core samples from the ocean floor reveal layers of sediment inconsistent with deep sea deposition, possible evidence of terrestrial environments now submerged. The science remains inconclusive. Plate tectonics does not support the sudden sinking of a continent in the past 12,000 years. There is no geological mechanism that could have drowned Atlantis overnight, as Plato claimed. And yet, the ocean keeps offering hints, fragments of data that don't quite fit the models. Formations that invite speculation, echoes of something lost. The Atlantic is the largest grave on the planet. It holds more mystery than the surface of Mars, more unexplored territory than any desert or jungle. If Atlantis is anywhere, it is here beneath the blue, beneath the weight of miles, waiting in the dark. Step onto the shores of Snow Miguel, one of the Azores' largest islands. The landscape is green and volcanic, sculpted by ancient eruptions and centuries of wind. Cliffs plunge into the sea, waves carving caves and arches from black basalt. Inland, crater lakes fill calderas, their surfaces mirror still, reflecting clouds and sky. The earth here feels young, restless, as if it remembers being forged in fire. Could these islands, 9 specks of land in the middle of the Atlantic, be the peaks of Plato's lost empire? Geologists have studied the Azores extensively. They confirm that the islands sit atop the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, formed by volcanic activity as the Eurasian and North American plates pull apart. But they also acknowledge something curious. The Azores Plateau, a broad underwater platform surrounding the islands, suggests that in the past, the region may have supported more landmass than it does today. Sea level changes, combined with subsidence and erosion, could have reduced a larger archipelago to the fragments visible now. The timeline, however, remains problematic. For the Azores to align with Plato's story, significant land would need to have existed and been lost within the last 12,000 years. The geological record does not support such a rapid event. Volcanic islands do not sink overnight. They erode, collapse in landslides, subside gradually as the crust cools and settles. A catastrophic submergence on the scale Plato described would leave unmistakable evidence in the rock layers, in the sediment cores, in the structure of the seabed. That evidence has not been found. And yet, something about the Azores refuses to let the hypothesis die. Perhaps it is their isolation, the way they rise from the deep like remnants of a forgotten world. Perhaps it is the legends whispered by early explorers who believed these islands were the last trace of a vanished continent. Or perhaps it is simply the human need to anchor myth to geography, to give Atlantis a location, a reality, a place on the map. The Azores may not be Atlantis, but they stand as a reminder that the ocean's memory is longer than ours, and that islands like civilizations can rise and fall, leaving behind only fragments and questions. Centuries earlier, in the Egyptian city of Size, a man named Solon listened to priests. Solon was a lawmaker from Athens, a traveler and philosopher visiting Egypt to learn from its ancient wisdom. The priests, keepers of records stretching back millennia, spoke of many things, of dynasties, of gods, of the rise and fall of nations. And then, one of them said something that Solon would carry back to Greece, a story that would eventually reach Plato and become legend. The priests told him of Atlantis. They said it had existed 9,000 years before, a powerful island empire that had waged war against the ancient world. According to the priests, Egypt itself had been young when Atlantis fell, barely a unified kingdom. The Atlanteans, they claimed, had been technologically advanced, rich beyond measure, but ultimately corrupt. The gods destroyed them, and the sea swallowed their land in a day and a night. Was this genuine history, preserved in the temple archives of Sais? Or was it a tale invented to impress a foreign visitor? Egyptologists remain skeptical. No hieroglyphic texts mention Atlantis by name. No records from the Old Kingdom describe a war with a transatlantic empire. The priests of Sais may have been relating a garbled version of older myths, perhaps the Minoan eruption of Thera, perhaps memories of sea peoples' invasions, perhaps nothing at all. But another possibility lingers at the edges of scholarship. What if Egypt's own origins are older, far older than dynastic records suggest? The Great Sphinx, for example, bears erosion patterns some researchers attribute to water, not wind. If true, that would place its construction during a period of intense rainfall, thousands of years before the pharaohs. The precision of the Giza pyramids, their alignment with celestial phenomena, their sheer scale all hint at knowledge that seems to appear fully formed, without precedent, as if inherited rather than developed. Could a pre-dynastic civilization, advanced and now forgotten, have existed in Egypt or nearby? Could it have been connected, somehow, to the culture Plato called Atlantis? The priests of Sais spoke of a lost world, and in doing so, they planted a seed one that has grown across millennia into a forest of speculation, reaching toward the sky, searching for light. The pyramids stand as they have stood for 45 centuries, silent, colossal, precise. They are monuments that defy easy explanation. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, built around 2580 BCE, consists of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing over 80 tons, fitted so tightly that a blade cannot slip between them. The structure is aligned to true north with an accuracy that rivals modern instruments. Its dimensions encode mathematical constants, pi, phi, the golden ratio in ratios so exact they seem intentional. And yet, according to Orthodox history, the Egyptians who built these pyramids had only just emerged from the Stone Age. They possessed copper tools, wooden sledges, and ropes. No cranes, no pulleys, no wheels suitable for heavy transport. The official explanation is that they achieved this through sheer human labor, ingenuity, and time. But what if the knowledge behind the pyramids was older? Some researchers point to astronomical alignments that, when calculated backward, place the Giza complex's conceptual design thousands of years earlier than the Fourth Dynasty. The shafts inside the Great Pyramid, for instance, align with stars Orion, Sirius, Alpha Draconis, but not as they appeared in 2500 BCE, when adjusted for precession. The alignments match the sky around 10,500 BCE, a date eerily close to Plato's timeline for Atlantis. The idea is controversial, dismissed by mainstream Egyptologists as pseudoscience. Precession, they argue, can make almost any date seem significant if one selects the right stars. And yet, The precision of the pyramids continues to inspire speculation. Could they be remnants of a lost technical tradition, inherited from a civilization that predated Egypt's rise? Plato wrote that Atlantis fell around 9600 BCE. If survivors of that cataclysm carried their knowledge elsewhere to Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to other corners of the ancient world, they might have seeded the architectural and astronomical insights that would later blossom into the great monuments of antiquity. The pyramids do not prove Atlantis existed, but they do suggest that humanity's story may be older, stranger, and more fragmented than we have been taught. They stand as questions carved in stone, waiting for answers that may never come. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map. It was a beautiful work, drawn on gazelle skin, combining information from multiple sources: Greek, Arabic, Portuguese, perhaps even charts captured from Christopher Columbus himself. The map showed the Atlantic, the coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the newly discovered Americas. For centuries, it was considered a remarkable but unremarkable artifact of early cartography. Then, in 1959, a scholar noticed something impossible. The map depicted the coastline of Antarctica, not the ice-covered landmass known to modern explorers, but the subglacial coastline, the mountains and bays and river valleys that lie hidden beneath miles of ice, features that were not mapped until the 1960s using ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys. How could a 16th century map show terrain that had been frozen and invisible for thousands of years? The mainstream explanation is that the map depicts the coast of South America, misinterpreted and distorted through copying. Cartographic errors, compounded over multiple generations of mapmakers, could account for the resemblance. And yet, when modern researchers overlaid Piri Reis's map onto actual subglacial data of Antarctica, the match was unsettling, not perfect, but far closer than coincidence should allow. Piri Reis himself wrote that he based his map on older charts, some dating to the time of Alexander the Great or earlier. Could those ancient sources have preserved geographical knowledge from a time when Antarctica was not yet fully glaciated, when its coasts were visible and perhaps even inhabited? The implications are staggering. If the Piri Reis map is accurate, it suggests that an advanced seafaring culture existed during or before the last ice age, a culture capable of global navigation and cartography, whose knowledge was passed down through centuries until it reached the workshops of Ottoman admirals. Was that culture Atlantis? Or something else, equally lost, equally forgotten? The map offers no names, no explanations. Only a coastline that should not exist, drawn with impossible accuracy, waiting to be understood. The ocean does not forget, but people do, except perhaps in stories. Aboriginal Australians have passed down oral traditions for over 10,000 years, some of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. Among their Dreamtime stories are precise descriptions of coastlines, islands, and land bridges that existed during the last ice age, when modern geologists mapped the submerged continental shelves around Australia. They found that the Aboriginal tailies matched the ancient geography with startling accuracy. Stories told generation after generation had preserved memories of a world drowned 7 millennia ago. The same phenomenon appears in Polynesia. Island cultures recount migrations across vast ocean distances, navigating by stars, currents, and the flight patterns of birds. They speak of lands that sank, of ancestors who fled rising waters, of homelands lost to the sea. When researchers began studying Pacific sea level changes, they discovered that many of these oral histories aligned with real geological events: islands submerged during the Holocene, atolls that vanished as the ocean rose. Even in Europe, echoes persist. Celtic legends tell of Lyoness, a land between Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, now beneath the waves. Breton folklore remembers the city of Ease, drowned when the sea broke through its walls. Welsh mythology speaks of Cantra Gwylyd, a fertile lowland kingdom claimed by the ocean. These are not identical to Atlantis, but they share its structure. Advanced societies, sudden catastrophe, the sea as destroyer and grave. What if Atlantis was never a single place, but a name applied to a universal human experience, the trauma of losing land to the ocean? In this interpretation, Plato's story is not history but archive, a distillation of countless local disasters, floods, tsunamis, coastal subsidence, compressed into one mythic narrative. The empire becomes a symbol, the cataclysm a collective memory encoded in the language of gods and hubris. But symbols, too, have origins. And if every culture around the world remembers the sea rising and the land drowning, perhaps the memory is not metaphor at all. Perhaps it is simply true a record of the day the glaciers melted, the ocean swelled, and whole worlds slipped beneath the blue. 14,600 years ago, the planet convulsed. Glaciologists call it Meltwater Pulse 1A, and it remains the most dramatic sea level rise event ever recorded in the geological archive. In less than 500 years a blink in geological time, the ocean surged upward by 16 to 25 meters. That is the height of a 6-story building. Imagine that much water flooding coastlines worldwide, not gradually over millennia, but in waves, in decades, in the span of a human lifetime. Communities that had lived for generations along river deltas, in coastal valleys, on low-lying plains, would have seen the sea advance year after year. At first, slowly a high tide did not recede fully, a marsh that became a lagoon. Then faster. Storms surged farther inland. Freshwater wells turned brackish. Fields flooded, never to drain again. Families migrated. Settlements were abandoned. Knowledge was lost not all at once, but piece by piece, as elders died before they could pass on the old ways, as communities fragmented and scattered. Those who survived carried stories, but stories change in the telling. Details blur. Geography becomes mythology. The flood becomes divine punishment. The drowned land becomes Atlantis, or Ys, or Lemuria, or any of 100 other names. Meltwater Pulse 1A was not the only event. Another surge occurred around 11,500 years ago, coinciding with the sudden warming at the end of the Younger Dryas, a brief return to Ice Age conditions that ended abruptly, releasing vast quantities of meltwater into the oceans once more. Sea levels rose another few meters, claiming more land, displacing more people. By the time the climate stabilized, around 6,000 years ago, the world had been transformed. Coastlines that once hosted thriving communities were submerged beneath shallow seas. River valleys had become bays. Islands had vanished. An entire chapter of human prehistory lay beneath the waves, accessible now only to sonar and submersibles and the slow, patient work of marine archaeology. If Atlantis existed, this was its death. Not a punishment from the gods, but a planetary realignment, the ice melting, the oceans claiming their due, and humanity learning for the first time that the Earth itself could betray them. The pulse of the planet drowned the past, and we have been searching for it ever since. But Atlantis, if it existed, would have left traces, not just in sunken ruins, but in the knowledge it scattered. Around the world, archaeologists have uncovered structures that defy conventional timelines. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, for example, dates to around 9600 BC, the exact period Plato gave for Atlantis' fall. It is a massive complex of carved pillars arranged in circles, decorated with reliefs of animals and abstract symbols. The site predates agriculture, pottery, even permanent settlements. And yet, it required organization, planning, and construction techniques sophisticated enough to move and shape stones weighing over 10 tons. Who built it? And where did they learn? Similar questions haunt other sites. Puma Pungchu in Bolivia features stone blocks cut with such precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate them using hand tools. The joints are seamless, the angles exact. The site dates to around 500 CE, but some researchers speculate its foundations may be far older, built upon or inspired by earlier traditions. The megalithic temples of Malta, the submerged structures off Yonaguni, the interlocking walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru all exhibit a level of technical skill that seems to appear suddenly in the archaeological record, without clear precursors, without trial and error phases. It is as if the knowledge arrived fully formed. Could these be echoes of a lost architectural lineage, seeded by survivors of a pre-flood civilization? The hypothesis is speculative. Mainstream archaeology attributes these achievements to human ingenuity, developed independently in response to local needs and environments. But the parallels are striking. The use of massive stones, the precision fitting, the astronomical alignments, the sense that these structures were meant to endure beyond the lifespans of their builders. Perhaps Atlantis was not a single city, but a culture, a network of knowledge that, when catastrophe struck, dispersed across the world. Its refugees would have carried skills: astronomy, engineering, agriculture, navigation. Settling in new lands, they would have taught, adapted, inspired. And over centuries, the origin would be forgotten, replaced by myths of gods and ancestors who came from the sea, bringing gifts of fire and wisdom. The architects of stone left no written records, but their work endures silent, massive, precise whispering of a past we have not yet fully understood. Look up, because Atlantis may not only be beneath the waves, it may also be written in the sky. Plato's timeline places the fall of Atlantis around 9600 BCE, a date that coincides with several significant astronomical events. The Earth's axial precession, a slow wobble that shifts which stars align with the poles, causes the positions of constellations to drift over millennia. Around 10,500 BCE, the constellation Orion reached its lowest point in the precessional cycle, an event mirrored, some researchers argue, in the layout of the Giza pyramids. But there is more. Geological and ice core evidence suggests that the end of the Younger Dryas was not gradual but catastrophic, triggered possibly by a comet impact or airburst. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that around 10,900 BCE, fragments of a disintegrating comet struck the Earth, igniting wildfires, triggering megafauna extinctions, and destabilizing the climate. The aftermath: rapid warming, melting ice sheets, rising seas. If such an impact occurred over the Atlantic or nearby, the resulting tsunamis and climate disruption could have devastated coastal civilizations. An island like Atlantis, low-lying, advanced, dependent on maritime trade, would have been obliterated. The sky in this scenario was not merely a witness, but an agent of destruction. Ancient myths support the connection. The Greeks spoke of Phaethon, who lost control of the sun chariot and scorched the earth. Indigenous American stories tell of a star that fell and brought fire and flood. The Hopi remember a time when the sky burned and the earth shook. These narratives, scattered across continents, share a common theme: celestial catastrophe. Modern astronomy has identified the Taurid meteor stream, remnants of a massive comet that broke apart roughly 20,000 years ago. The Earth passes through this debris field twice a year. Could a denser cluster of fragments have struck during the Younger Dryas, fulfilling the mythic pattern of destruction from above? Atlantis, in this framework, becomes both victim and warning. A civilization destroyed not by hubris or divine wrath, but by the random violence of the cosmos. The sky, indifferent and eternal, erased it, and the survivors, looking up at the stars, inscribed the memory into their temples, their calendars, their stories, so that future generations might see the heavens not as benevolent, but as dangerous, powerful, and unforgiving. Now shift the map southward, toward the bottom of the world, Antarctica, the frozen continent. Buried beneath ice sheets 2 miles thick, it is the most inhospitable place on Earth. Temperatures plunge to -90 degrees Celsius. Winds scream across barren ice at 200 kilometers per hour. Nothing grows. Few creatures survive. It is a desert of white, locked in glacial stasis for the past 30 million years. Or is it? Some researchers propose a radical hypothesis. Before the ice, Antarctica was Atlantis. The theory hinges on timing. Around 12,000 years ago, the end of the Ice Age saw global temperatures rise, but Antarctica's glaciation intensified. What if the continent had been ice-free, or partially so, for a longer period than currently believed? What if a temperate Antarctica existed during the last interglacial, home to ecosystems, perhaps even human habitation, before the climate shifted and the ice reclaimed it? Satellite surveys and ice-penetrating radar have revealed surprising features beneath Antarctica's ice. Mountain ranges comparable to the Alps, valleys carved by rivers, subglacial lakes the size of small seas. The topography suggests a landscape that, if uncovered, could support life. And in rare ice-free zones, dry valleys, and coastal regions, researchers have found fossils of temperate plants, evidence that Antarctica was once far warmer. The Piri-Reis map resurfaces here, its depiction of an ice-free Antarctic coastline lending speculative weight to the hypothesis. If ancient cartographers possessed knowledge of Antarctica before its glaciation, where did that knowledge come from? Could a civilization have flourished there, only to be erased when the ice advanced, their memory surviving only as fragments in Egyptian and Greek traditions? The idea is fantastical. Antarctica's glaciation began millions of years before humans evolved. And even during brief warm periods, the continent remained largely frozen at its core. There is no evidence, no ruins, no artifacts, no DNA of human presence predating modern exploration. Yet the ice is so thick, so vast, that much of the bedrock remains unmapped. If ruins exist, they lie miles beneath the surface, entombed in ice, invisible to all but the most advanced scanning technologies. What secrets might Antarctica hold, frozen and patient, waiting for the day the ice melts and the world sees what lies beneath? In 1968, off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, a diver named J. Manson Valentine made a discovery. He was exploring the shallow waters near the island when he saw them. Massive rectangular blocks of stone arranged in a seemingly linear pattern stretching for several hundred meters. The blocks were limestone, each several feet across, fitted closely together. At first glance, they resembled a road or a wall, submerged and ancient, as if paved by hands long before history began. Valentine believed he had found evidence of Atlantis. The formation, he argued, was too regular to be natural. Its alignment, its structure, its very existence suggested human construction, possibly a harbor, a causeway, or a ceremonial pathway built by a lost civilization. The announcement sparked fierce debate. Geologists quickly countered that the Bimini Road was a natural feature, a beach rock formation, created when limestone sediment solidifies in tidal zones and fractures into geometric patterns as it weathers. Such formations are common in tropical shallow waters and require no human intervention. But the mystery refused to dissolve. Subsequent dives revealed features that seemed deliberate. Blocks stacked atop one another as if layered, right-angled turns in the formation's path, what appeared to be anchor stones or mooring posts nearby. Proponents argued that while beach rock can fracture, it does not stack, does not turn corners, does not align with such precision. Mainstream archaeology remains unconvinced. No tools, no artifacts, no organic material has been found that would confirm human construction. Radiocarbon dating of material from the formation places it within the range of natural geological processes. And yet, visitors to the site, divers, researchers, curious tourists continue to report an eerie sense of intentionality. as if the stones were once part of something grander, now lost to erosion and time. The Bimini Road may be nothing more than fractured limestone, shaped by waves and tides into an accidental monument. Or it may be a single, tantalizing piece of something far older, a civilization that built along coastlines now drowned, leaving behind only ambiguous traces that hover forever between nature and design. The ocean keeps its secrets close, and the stones, silent beneath the blue, offer no answers. But what if Atlantis did not vanish entirely? What if, in the final hours before the waters rose, some escaped? Picture it, a coastal civilization, advanced and maritime, watching the horizon darken with storms. The sea surging higher each day, swallowing docks and warehouses, temples and homes. Earthquakes fracturing the ground, volcanic ash darkening the sky. The people know they are doomed, but they also know the sea. They have ships. Some flee westward toward the Americas, others east toward Europe and Africa. A few perhaps sail south, hoping to outrun the catastrophe. They carry what they can: tools, seeds, star charts, sacred knowledge. They are refugees, survivors of a world that no longer exists. When they reach new shores, they settle among indigenous peoples. They teach astronomy, agriculture, architecture. The knowledge is fragmentary, incomplete. Much was lost in the chaos, but it is enough to leave an imprint. Over generations, the refugees' origins fade into legend. They become gods, culture heroes, bringers of civilization. The myths remember them. Viracaka in South America, a pale stranger who taught building and farming before disappearing across the sea. Quetzalcoatl in Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent who brought knowledge and then departed. Thoth in Egypt, the god of wisdom and writing, sometimes depicted as a foreigner. Oannes in Mesopotamia, a fishman who emerged from the ocean to teach humanity. Coincidence? Or cultural memory of real people, Atlantean refugees who arrived by sea and shared their skills? Genetic studies add a layer of intrigue. DNA analysis has revealed unexpected connections between ancient populations separated by vast oceans. Traces of Polynesian DNA appear in South America long before European contact. Pre-Columbian skulls in Brazil share features with Melanesian populations. These anomalies suggest contact, migration, transoceanic voyages that orthodox history does not account for. Could Atlantean survivors have dispersed so widely, mingling with indigenous peoples, that their genetic signature persists in scattered, diluted traces? The hypothesis is unproven, but it offers an elegant explanation for the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in multiple regions around. 10,000 BC, the dawn of agriculture, monumental architecture, complex astronomy. Not independent invention, but diffusion. Seeds planted by refugees who survived the greatest catastrophe in human memory and carried their world's dying light to new shores, where it flickered, adapted, and eventually became the foundation of all civilization. Modern science offers tools to test these speculations, and the results, while inconclusive, are far from dismissive. Archaeogenetics, the study of ancient DNA, has revolutionized our understanding of human migration. We now know that prehistoric populations moved far more than previously believed, crossing oceans, traversing continents, mingling and diverging in patterns too complex for simple models. The peopling of the Americas, for instance, involved multiple waves of migration from Asia, possibly even contributions from Oceania. These journeys required sophisticated navigation, seaworthy vessels, and knowledge of currents and stars. If such voyages were possible 15,000 years ago, why not earlier? Why not by a culture more advanced, more organized, more desperate? Linguistics adds another layer. Language families, groups of related tongues descending from common ancestors, sometimes show unexpected connections. Certain root words for fundamental concepts like water, stone, sky appear in languages separated by oceans, suggesting either deep antiquity or contact. While mainstream linguists attribute this to coincidence or universal cognitive patterns, others see echoes of a proto-language, a mother tongue spoken before the flood scattered humanity. Climate science, too, supports the broader narrative. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica preserve atmospheric records stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. They confirm that the end of the Ice Age was not gradual, but marked by sudden violent shifts, temperature swings of 10 degrees Celsius in a matter of decades, abrupt changes that would have devastated any civilization dependent on stable coastlines and predictable seasons. None of this proves Atlantis existed, but it establishes the conditions under which it could have. The planet was in upheaval, coastlines drowned. Advanced maritime cultures, if they existed, would have been obliterated. Survivors would have fled, carrying knowledge that would seem miraculous to Stone Age peoples. Over millennia, the origin story would blur, myth and memory merging until the line between them dissolved. Science cannot yet say Atlantis was real, but neither can it say with certainty that it was not. The evidence is fragmentary, suggestive, tantalizingly incomplete. The truth, if it exists, lies buried under ocean sediment, under ice, under layers of time so deep that even memory struggles to reach it. And then, in 2017, geologists announced a discovery that changed the conversation entirely. They called it Zealandia, a continent. Not a theoretical one, not a mythic one, but a real, measurable landmass 1.89 million square miles in area, roughly 2/3 the size of Australia. It lies mostly submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean, east of Australia, with only New Zealand and a few smaller islands breaking the surface. Zealandia possesses all the geological hallmarks of a continent: distinct crust, defined boundaries, elevation above the surrounding ocean floor. It's separated from the supercontinent Gondwana around 80 million years ago and began sinking, a slow subsidence caused by tectonic stretching and cooling. Today, 94% of it lies underwater, hidden beneath waves and sediment. The implications are profound. If a continent the size of India can sink and remain largely forgotten until the 21st century, what else might be hidden beneath the oceans? Zealandia proves, beyond doubt, that large landmasses can submerge. It validates Plato's basic premise that a significant region can exist, flourish, and then be swallowed by the sea, leaving behind only fragments. The mechanism is slow. Zealandia took millions of years to sink, but the principle holds. Continents are not fixed. The boundary between land and sea is fluid, negotiable, subject to forces we are only beginning to understand. Could Atlantis have been a smaller, faster version of Zealandia? A volcanic plateau, uplifted by mantle plumes, that collapsed when the forces sustaining it shifted? Or a continental shelf exposed during low sea levels, then drowned as the ice melted? The discovery of Zealandia has emboldened geologists to search for other submerged landmasses. Oceanic plateaus, seamounts, and ridges are being mapped with increasing precision. Each survey reveals features that challenge assumptions about the permanence of geography. The ocean, it turns out, is not merely deep, it is layered with history, with landscapes that rose and fell, shaped by tectonics and climate and time. Atlantis may remain undiscovered, but Zealandia reminds us that the world is larger and stranger than our maps suggest. That beneath the blue, entire continents sleep, and that sometimes myth and geology are not opposites, but reflections, two ways of remembering what the Earth has forgotten. Pause here. Step back from the sonar scans, the DNA analyses, the geological surveys. Because perhaps Atlantis was never meant to be found. Plato was a philosopher, not a historian. His dialogues were not chronicles, but explorations of ideas, justice, virtue, the nature of the ideal state. Atlantis appears in his work not as a travel log, but as a moral lesson, a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris and the inevitable decay of even the greatest civilizations. In Critias, Plato describes how Atlantis, initially virtuous and divinely favored, became corrupted over time. The people grew greedy, ambitious, militaristic. They sought to conquer the known world. And so Zeus, in council with the other gods, decided to punish them. The dialogue ends abruptly, mid-sentence, before the punishment is described, but the implication is clear. Atlantis fell not because of natural disaster, but because it deserved to fall. This reading transforms Atlantis from a lost city into a mirror. It reflects not the past, but the present and the future. Every empire, every civilization, no matter how advanced, carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. Wealth breeds corruption. Power breeds arrogance. And arrogance blinds societies to the dangers gathering at their borders, in their streets, beneath their foundations. Atlantis, in this interpretation, is us. It is Rome at its height, blind to the barbarians at the gates. It is the British Empire, convinced of its invincibility even as it crumbled. It is every modern superpower, confident in its technology, its military, its economy, while climate change, inequality, and instability simmer beneath the surface. Plato's message was not search for the lost city. It was do not become the lost city. And perhaps that is why Atlantis endures. Not because it was real, but because it is true. Not as history, but as warning. Every generation looks at the ruins of those who came before, the pyramids, the Colosseum, the abandoned cities swallowed by jungle and wonders. Could this happen to us? Could our towers fall, our knowledge be forgotten, our names dissolve into myth? Atlantis says, yes, always, unless we learn, unless we remember, unless we resist the gravity that pulls all civilizations downward, from light into darkness, from memory into legend. The waves roll in, slow and eternal, beneath a moon that has watched them for billions of years. Down below, in the deep places where light does not reach, the ocean floor stretches silent and vast. Mountains rise and fall. Valleys carved through ancient stone. And somewhere, scattered across that darkness, lie the remnants of everything humanity has lost. Not just Atlantis, if it existed, but countless other stories. Other peoples, other worlds drowned by time and tide, and the relentless turning of the planet. Perhaps Atlantis is still there. Not as Plato imagined golden towers and concentric rings of water, but as fragments. A foundation stone buried under silt. A collapsed temple unrecognizable beneath coral. A road, half eroded, leading nowhere. The ocean keeps what it takes, but it transforms everything. Erosion wears stone smooth. Sediment buries evidence. Currents scatter debris across thousands of miles. What was once a city becomes geology. Or perhaps Atlantis never sank at all. Perhaps it endured, not as a place, but as a people. The survivors scattered, yes, but they carried something with them. Not just tools and knowledge, but memory. And memory, passed down through generations, preserved in stories and symbols and sacred sites, is a kind of immortality. Atlantis lives in the myths we tell, in the monuments we build, in the questions we ask when we stand at the edge of the sea and wonder what lies beneath. The ocean remembers. It holds the past in its depths, patient and silent. And we, standing on the shore, looking out across the blue horizon, are the heirs of everything it has swallowed. We build our cities on the edge of the water, just as our ancestors did, knowing the risk, unable to resist the pull. Because the sea is not just the grave of civilizations, it is also the cradle. It gave us life, shaped our evolution, carried us across continents. And if it takes back what it gave, perhaps that is not tragedy, but inevitability. The tide that rises must also fall. The land that drowns may one day emerge again. Atlantis, if it exists, waits, not to be found, but to be understood. Not as a lost city, but as a question that has no answer, only the searching. And in that searching, we discover not the past, but ourselves. Fragile, hopeful, building towers on the sand, telling stories beneath the stars, certain that this time we will not be forgotten. The ocean whispers. And if we listen closely, we hear not words, but echoes of waves, of time, of everything that was and everything that will be, all of it held in the blue, all of it waiting, patient and deep and endless.